This week on Cinemaholics, we're triple reviewing Triple Frontier, a new soldier heist film debuting on Netflix featuring special guest Sam Nolan.
This is probably one of the most memorable heist scenes I've seen in some time, at least.
We're also getting emotional over the new teen romance dramedy 5 Feet Apart, starring Haley Lee Richardson and Cole Sprouse.
I think it's good to give a platform for cystic fibrosis. I don't think we often see this in films.
Stick around for even more reviews, including the new sci-fi release Captive State, Afterlife from Ricky Gervais and The Mustang, now in limited release. It's a film that shows us prison life in some unique ways. All that and more is coming up on Cinemaholics. Welcome once again to Cinemaholics. He is a pop culture writer for Cinema Blend. He also reviews films for The Playlist, Cut Print Film, Hey You Guys, and of course, Cinemaholics.com. It is Will Ashton.
Top of the morning to you, John.
And I am the author of the novel Killer Joy, a book about Pixar called The Pixar Theory, and I write about film for Atom Insider, Relevant Magazine, The Young Folks, and of course, Cinemaholics. I am John Negroni. Our guest this week is one of our chief Cinemaholic contributors. He does our Movie of the Week column on the website. He has been dipping his toes into some newer releases, though, we should say. Always great to have you on, Sam Nolan.
It is great to be back. Thanks for having me on Cinemaholics once again.
Thank you so much for filling in. It's actually not that easy to find somebody who wants to watch Triple Frontier, but here you are.
Hey, now.
So you can find more episodes of Cinemaholics on atomtickets.com, and you can write into the show anytime. If you got a message for us, send it our way, cinemaholicspodcast@gmail.com. If you want to support our show and help us remain the podcast you love to listen to, you can become one of our monthly patrons and get exclusive perks. Just go to patreon.com/cinemaholics. And as always, links to everything we're talking about are going to be in the episode description and on cinemaholics.com. So we are talking about Triple Frontier in this episode, as well as a wide theatrical release. So Triple Frontier is a Netflix streaming film. 5 Feet Apart is the big wide release movie. The funny thing is, Wonder Park hit more theaters than anything we're talking about, but none of us saw it. So
nobody cared. Yeah.
Well, we didn't care, apparently, but we did do a Patreon poll, which is why I brought it up. And I don't think any of our patrons voted for Wonder Park. You did vote for Triple Frontier and 5 Feet Apart. So we are going to talk about those two films. We are also going to be talking about Captive State and The Mustang, which hit limited release, and a new Netflix show called Afterlife, starring Ricky Gervais, which I really don't want to watch. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say about it, Will.
Okay.
Ashton.
Thanks. Sure.
But yeah, there was also the new Nancy Drew film, which I was looking at this, and this was the highest rated film that came out in theaters this weekend. I think it has about a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. Last I checked, 77. Look at that. It's called Nancy Drew and the Hidden Staircase. Kimber Myers gave us kind of a sneak peek review of it last week. She said that she really liked it, and it looks like she's not alone. But I had a chance to see this one, but it was St. Patrick's Day. I don't know what that says about me personally, but Will Ashton, did you have a good St. Patrick's Day? I forgot to ask you.
It's still going on, so I'm still having a good St. Patrick's Day.
Perfect. And Sam Nolan, I don't think you are yet of drinking age, so we will not even ask you the question. Let's just, some things are better left unsaid.
That's right.
But yeah, so we have a couple of things coming your way and off topics. We did a special bonus episode of the show, our latest extra milestone. If you are a patron of Cinemaholics, you're going to get this episode a couple weeks early. That's going to be coming out later this week, depending on when you hear this episode. And in our new extra milestone, we talked about the classic film, Some Like It Hot, which celebrated its 60th anniversary. It came out in 1959. And that was a really fun conversation. I can't wait to re-listen to that. I haven't finished producing the episode, but it's going to be ready soon. And I had a blast talking about that. One of my favorite films ever.
Yeah, that was a good conversation. And I hope likewise. You Patreon users get a kick out of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Speaking of films that came out some time ago, Sam Nolan, you did a film of the week, a movie of the week for us, the Criterion Channel. For people who don't know what this is, this column, can you explain it? And what was this week's featured title?
I would love to. So the movie of the week, in case you don't know, is something that's put on every single week by the Criterion Channel, of course, run by the Criterion Collection. And for early subscribers of the channel, which is not officially debuted yet, you get to watch one movie a week for free, for no extra cost. and it comes with a variety of special features. And this past week, the movie of the week they chose was Barbara Loden's Wanda, which I had never heard of before nor seen. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And it was the first movie ever to be written and directed by a woman. There were movies before that had one or the other, but this is the first time that a woman wrote and directed and starred, for that matter, in her own movie. And it became an instant classic for me. So I wrote the movie of the week article. John, you were very fond of that article, which I was pleased by.
It was very emotional, and it just made me really want to see the movie, which is what hopefully that's going to bring about. I saw that a few comments from people who are fans of the film appreciated the write-up. So if you ever want to comment on any of our stuff, you can find that on cinemaholics.com and hopefully have some good discussions of some older films along with the newer ones that we're going to talk about this week. You know, we haven't really done that in a while, kind of looked at feedback from previous episodes of the show, but we are starting. I mean, the website is still pretty new. We're still kind of building a base of people, but we did get some comments on our Captain Marvel review from last week. That, of course, was the episode where we talked to Kimber Myers about the latest Marvel film, and we did get a few comments. And so I kind of want to look at a few of them. GTEH had some appreciation for Kimber, and who also did a shout out to Corey Woodruff, who was on the show pretty recently, and you by default, of course, Sam Nolan said a lot of great guests lately.
Sure. Let's assume that, yes.
I really like this one comment from Jack Burton, which I think is a reference to something, who said Captain Marvel was about as good. Wait, what?
Jack Burton, that's a reference to Big Trouble in Little China, right?
I knew that sounded familiar. Okay. I think it was the actual Jack Burton.
Best characters of all time.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen that film since high school, but all right. So Jack Burton said, Captain Marvel was about as good as any of the non-Reeves Superman movies. I can't wait to see how they solve the problem of her being so obviously overpowered. As the face of the next generation of Avengers, I think it's interesting that she won't be a newcomer by any means. She's been an Avenger longer than anyone, except for Steve and Thor and maybe Black Widow and Hawkeye. She's a leader with experience, but we're still getting to know her. I love that Marvel put the effort into making her comics good at the height of the MCU Phase 1 craze, so we can now see it pay off with movies. One thing the MCU does so much better than the DCEU is planning. I love DC movies, of course, but they have a long way to go when it comes to setting things up and paying them off. I really like the DC movies too, Jack Burton. And so, but yeah, there are some strengths the MCU has over them and vice versa. But yeah, so a lot of great reviews on here. I think somebody called Kimber one of the fam, which I don't know if that's your call, but I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can always find episodes of Cinemaholics posted on the website, and if you want to join the conversation, you can find that there. But without any further ado, let's talk about Triple Frontier, a new Netflix film. Will, did you hear anything about this film before we decided we were going to talk about it?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I knew that it was in like production hell for a while, probably about like 10 or 15 years. I remember it was like announced, I think, sometime around The Hurt Locker. I think it was like a project that Catherine Bigelow was pursuing after that film, and then she was still interested in it, but she didn't find the time to make it herself, so she produced this film.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Yeah, I was literally going to mention that because while I was watching Triple Frontier, I was like, man, this is really making me think of The Hurt Locker. But then I looked into it, and yeah, it is kind of like a Bigelow-styled movie, but it was actually directed by J.C. Shandor, who has made 3 films before. And
4 films.
Right? 4 films, okay. I thought it was 3.
It was Margin Call. No, wait, no, I think you're right. It was Margin Call, All Is Lost, and then A Most Violent Year, right? And
yes.
This one.
So this is the 4th film.
Right. Yeah, you're right, yeah.
Now, the only film I've seen from Shandor is A Most Violent Year, but I didn't finish it, so I can't really say. I know. I saw it in theaters and I had to leave. But aside from that, yeah, I don't know too much about Shandor's filmography. Sam, had you watched any of these films before?
I haven't, and I feel utterly terrible about it because I've been meaning to see All Is Lost for a long time. I've heard really good things about that one.
Sam, I've heard nothing but things. Yeah. What'd you say?
I said I've seen all these movies, so I can talk about 'em.
Oh,
Okay.
good for
Yeah.
you.
So
Sorry.
diligent and
Yeah.
disciplined, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I think he has a good track record of making films that are like good to pretty good. Like I'd say all of his films are well made. And I do like. I think each film he tries to like diverse himself a little bit. So the first film was like a Wall Street recession film, so it was like very talk heavy. The second film was like no dialogue, pretty much, and then the third film was like kind of like a throwback genre film for him. And then this film is kind of more conventionally appealing, I guess, kind of a more mainstream film for him. So I do appreciate that he does try to do something at least a little different, I think, with each production of his. So. And I'd say Most Violent Year is probably my favorite of the four of them.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's been about 5 years since that came out. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. But
a most violent 5 years.
Yeah, all is lost, you could say.
Yeah, I see what you did.
So like Will said, Bigelow is a producer on this, and it is kind of a mainstream film in a sense. Like, I'm actually pretty surprised this didn't hit theaters, because it does kind of have that Den of Thieves, 12 strong. Did it hit like a very limited release though?
Yeah, it was in theaters like in New York and LA last week.
Okay, besides that though, I'm talking more of like, like a wide expanded release.
Right.
I guess they just didn't really want to give it that January, February label. And then at the same time, they I guess they just assumed, probably correctly, that more people would be interested if this hit Netflix instead. So the film, as we alluded to, it is pretty similar to Den of Thieves. It's about a group of aging American war veterans who go on a heist in South America. I never really caught which exact country they were in. I got the sense it was Brazil, but it could have been maybe Colombia or Venezuela. I had a hard time understanding some of the geography here until later on they actually said things.
It said Colombia in the credits, I believe. So I think that
might have been where they shot it.
Right, yeah.
That might not be, who knows? So fact check us, please. If you're listening, we don't know exactly where this part takes. I don't know if they were intentionally a bit ambiguous about that, but you do get the sense it's Colombia for sure. So yeah, they decided they decided to not just rob a drug lord, these American war veterans, but also assassinate him. And like I said before, I was literally thinking of The Hurt Locker. I did not see a trailer for this. Sam, you and I were talking about this beforehand. Like, we didn't know anything about this film going in. I hadn't seen a trailer, so I didn't know that Bigelow was even vaguely connected to this. So when I was thinking of The Hurt Locker, it just made me think about how sometimes a director's style is so distinct, you can't help but see their fingerprints on something. And I didn't really get that sense with Shandor, but I don't know if I could, because I obviously haven't been as experienced with his filmography. And so, Will, do you think that's the case? Do you think Shandor's stamp is really on this movie before we really get into like our actual review of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I think he's trying to diverse himself with each project. So I don't know if he has a definitive stamp at this point. That's not to say that he does anything wrong per se. I do think, the competent camera work and like the kind of efficiency with which it's filmed is pretty natural to his other films. So I guess those are qualities of his. But I'd say, throughout the film, I often was thinking of Catherine Bigelow and how like this felt like a movie she would have made. And so, that's my impression as well. And also, what I meant to say earlier was that it was supposed to be Colombia. So,
okay,
Sam was correct.
There you go. Good job, Sam. But
thank you.
Yeah, Bigelow's last film was Detroit from a couple years ago, and that was a film very different from this one for sure. But yeah, so Triple Frontier kicks off with Oscar Isaac. He spent the last 3 years hunting the drug lord and finding out where his mansion is, and he gets the help of this informant, and he finally knows where the drug lord is so he can actually pull off this heist. But the problem is that he needs a really good team. Right? He can't just go in with the people who, like the Colombian police, because they'll tip the drug lord off and all of that. So he needs to basically find people who are ghosts, who he knows won't turn on him, and tip off the drug lord. So he tracks down his old army buddies. And this is where we get our central cast. There's Ben Affleck, the big and grizzled divorced dad who's now selling condos, but he apparently used to be the leader of this group. That was the sense that I got, that he used to be like their commander. Yeah. I don't know if that's off base, but yeah, because they all will say like, okay, we're not going to do this unless he's in. So it just seems like he's sort of the heart
How
and
meta.
brain of the operation.
How meta.
I was thinking that too. Yeah, it's like, wait, is Ben Affleck gonna? There is actually some interesting things around the cast of this. I think Tom Hanks was originally going to be in that role, and
I heard Will Smith.
I didn't hear about Will Smith. I heard about some other actors, but okay. Here's the cast we did get. We got Charlie Hunnam and Garrett Hedlund as brothers who kind of blank slates to an extent. I mean, the Garrett Hedlund character is like an MMA fighter, kind of more of a daredevil. Charlie Hunnam is, I didn't really get much of a character from him in this. He likes to count things, and that was treated as a trait, but okay. And then there's Pedro Pascal, who is the group's pilot. His job is supposed to be to get them out of the country once the money's been stolen so they can make a clean getaway, because obviously people are going to be after them. So as you can imagine with a movie like this, your heist movie is only as good as what goes wrong, I think. And as you can imagine, this isn't going to be quite so easy for these extremely trained and competent Army guys. So we have a clip in this one. Oscar Isaac's character, Pope, is trying to convince Ben Affleck's character, Redfly, why should he accept this mission. And one of the crazy things about this clip is they're in a pickup truck drinking beer and stuff, and Redfly's daughter is in the back seat. She's got like earbuds in, but they're talking about this, not even caring that she's in the back seat and she might be listening. But regardless, here is the clip for Triple Frontier.
So, I guess you'll just keep selling condos and I'll run and gun until my knees finally blow out? Or you could do this without me. I could, but I don't want to. Because I say we deserve better, man. How many times did we fly around with 20 million bucks at our feet to pay off some cockroach somewhere, and we never took a dime? Hell, you've been shot 4 times. 5. You've been shot 5 times for your country, and you can't even afford a new truck. That's the real crime. Good to see you, Tess.
Good to see you.
You coming back?
Yeah, I'll be back in 20. Gonna drop her off. Is Ironhead in?
Only if you are.
All right, that is a clip from Triple Frontier, which is now streaming on Netflix. Sam Nolan, what did you think of this one? Overall, it was a surprise movie for you, right? So your expectations were nothing. What did you think?
Yeah. Completely blind. I was just, John messaged me and was like, Sam, watch this movie. I was like, all right, Jesus.
Yeah. It's exactly how it went. Yeah. Tone and everything.
That's exactly how it happened. Yes, John's very assertive at times like this. But yeah, I barely knew anything. I read like a 1-sentence synopsis. I'd seen like a couple of screenshots. I was like, oh, the cast is good. Let me check it out. And I thought it had a little bit of an iffy first act. The pacing wasn't quite there for me, but pretty much as soon as the heist starts, I think this is a really interesting movie, and it does a lot of things right. There are a few problems I have that obviously we'll talk about that I think hold it back from being like, a definite must-see recommendation. But I think it's really solid. I'm not too big on watching Netflix originals, but I plan to change that, and I think this was a good way to sort of bring me over, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the Netflix originals are starting to get a little bit more, like the batting average is getting better, I would say. With Shirkers last year, Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Roma, Caliber, we had some really good ones. And yeah, the stink of the branding that might have been on it just a year ago is really starting to fade away, and our expectations are, in a good way, getting a little bit better, I would say. So, what about you, Will Ashton? You did know a little bit about this film. You have seen a lot from this filmmaker, so one could say that you had some baggage tying you down while trying to cross the mountain of this review. So, what would you say your impression of Triple Frontier?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm Ben Affleck in this scenario, which makes perfect sense. I think that was my main point of interest coming into this film was Ben Affleck. I would say the pivotal Ben Affleck, which is a bearded, slightly overweight, sad-eyed, mumbling, and often beer drinking Ben Affleck with the Phoenix tattoo that's hidden throughout the film, disappointingly.
You'll sell
Yeah,
that condo, Will Ashton. Don't you worry.
I know. I just feel like I can finally relate to this mega millionaire Ben Affleck, you know. Yeah, no, I generally, I think, agree with Sam. I was kind of okay with the beginning. The whole film feels very procedural in a way that kind of put me off. Like it felt like kind of cut and dry in a way that left little room for like proper character growth. You just kind of like got like the basics, the gist of everything in a way that just kind of felt a little like stock. Just like we just need to do this so we can get to this point. We need to do this to get to that point. It felt a little bit like a Jerry Bruckheimer production from like maybe 10 or like 15 years ago, which is kind of surprising considering that this film has some similarities to that other Jerry Bruckheimer movie that came out a year or two ago, 12 or 13 Strong, the Horse Soldiers one.
Yeah, very similar, but this is definitely a better film, I would say.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would say, yeah, I think for me, it was like the heist was when I was starting to get into it. It was well made, you know, it was generally pretty intense. And that's where I realized the like kind of efficiency of the film was mirroring the characters themselves. Like they're people who are experienced veterans of this particular field. So they just try to do everything as best they can. And obviously it doesn't work out quite as well this time. But yeah, I wasn't crazy about the ending, unfortunately, which kind of brought me down a few pegs. But I will say, I think when it's good, it's a well-made film.
Yeah. I was actually thinking during this movie how nice it kind of was to see a different location than what we're used to. We're kind of in the, not the aftermath, but we're sort of in the post-mortem of films that take place in the Middle East. It just has felt like ever since Desert Storm, that's been such a heavy focus for a lot of war movies because of historical, factual things. And it's been a while. It's been a while since we've had these kind of like mountainous jungles where it's called Triple Frontier, and there are a lot of different locations that they shot this film in. It's just something that like impressed me was the variety of what you're seeing. But yeah, I'm right there with you guys in terms of, I was confused in the very beginning because I was like, we're spending so much time with this setup for what will eventually pay off as tension, but it's a tension that I don't think ever is really what is good about the film. I think the actual good parts of this film are when these war guys are all together, they're bantering, they're kind of like getting lost in this mission, so to speak. And man, when this film starts to like drive some points across, I mean, you get to this point where these characters are exhausted, broken, and tired, and they kind of really earn like these breakdowns of like morality and these metaphors, these very obvious metaphors. I mean, money is literally weighing them down. This movie makes no bones about what it's trying to say, right? Like,
Yeah.
And I like it because I think some people will watch this and maybe rightfully they'll be like, oh, this is a clear repudiation of the war on terror and what we did to our soldiers. And I think that's part of it. But then also, I think that you get a lot of Blackwater vibes. If you follow anything in terms of like private military and, you know, the really like the sense, the code that they're supposed to have and how that can easily fall apart is something that kind of comes up in this movie. And yeah, in my review, I called them soldiers of misfortune. And that really is what it is. They're so, it's so tragic, these characters' lives. And I like that this movie brings up how we train these people to be these powerful human beings who can do these specifically deadly acts. And then we just expect them to return to civilian life. And I think some people will watch this and will be like, well, I can't believe that these guys would risk their lives like that. And, you know, somebody who has loved ones who've been through what these guys have been through, men and women, I believe it 100% that something like this would happen, that people would do something like this. And it would be extremely morally gray. If anything, it would not just morally gray, but like morally black, you know, like there isn't a very sympathetic way you can look at this at one point. And I kind of agree that the ending sort of was like, is that really how this ends? And I don't know how I felt about that one either, but without spoiling anything, Sam, what did you think of the end?
The end is sort of troubling to me because obviously, without giving anything away, there is an event that takes place not like at the very end, but sort of a little bit after the halfway point of the movie, I would guess, where they were sort of a dramatic turn. There are a couple of dramatic turns, and one of them I thought was sort of hurt the ultimate resolution, in that there was no remorse for this thing that they did at the end. And so I feel like there's sort of a dangling story here, that maybe could have been improved by a different director, or a different writer, maybe, or just with a different combination of scenes. So the ending is probably is certainly problematic, in how it relates to other parts of the movie. But obviously, I can't give too much away.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I do applaud the film for taking that risk. Not saying what it is, but I mean, it is, it's a risky decision. I know this is based on a true story, so I don't know how much of that actually happened and how much this is just based on something or inspired by it. So I don't know if that's something that actually happened, but
I'm pretty sure it's a combination of true things or something. Yeah, it's very fictionalized for sure.
I mean, it's Mark Boyle, right? The guy who wrote Hurt Locker and all of Catherine Bigelow's films recently. He was like a journalist turned screenwriter. So
right, yeah.
He wrote it with J.C. Candor. And I think you can kind of tell, like, I think what Sam's saying is accurate. Like you can kind of tell that the film, like, sees that more as like a means to an end than like a point of catharsis or really saying anything powerful. It's more just like the way for these characters to kind of put aside their differences in a sort of way and like kind of like learn to do what's best for the greater good. Which I understand. It's fine. It's like it's efficient. Like it does what it needs to do for the sake of ending the film. But it's just kind of disappointing because like a decision like that's like that genuinely raises the stakes in a huge way. And I was very curious, like, okay, is the movie going to like push itself into like a greater point of good, or is it going to fumble? And unfortunately, I felt like that's the point where it fumbled.
Yeah, I was waiting for a bigger surprise in terms of how it's going to relate to all the themes, and it doesn't really happen. This movie just sort of, it doesn't have a big climax in a traditional sense, which I'm not saying is a flaw. It just sort of peters out as it goes. And then, it doesn't have the type of resolution I feel like it was really building toward. And maybe that's just the perils of a first watch. And maybe a second watch would ease my, my troubles with all of it. But yes, let's talk more about the filmmaking in general, the performances. What stuck out to you, Sam, in terms of the cinematography here? Obviously, this is an expensive looking film. They made it look expensive at least. Well, were there any scenes that really stuck out to you? I will say for me, the heist itself, I thought was masterfully done.
Yeah, the heist. There's a thing in heist movies where it's sort of like the cliche, where the heist, there's like one thing that goes wrong before the heist. They're like, oh, this won't be a problem. We can deal with that. And then it ends up being a huge problem. What they do in this heist, and it's not really giving anything away because it's pretty early on, is that for an uncomfortably long time, everything goes really well. And because you're in for like, a thriller heist movie, it's all going to go wrong. And so part of the thrill is just waiting for it to go wrong. And so this is probably one of the most memorable heist scenes I've seen in some time, at least. So that scene certainly stuck out. I think the entire movie looks great. The other I'm going to talk about this week, I can't see a damn thing. This time I can see everything. And so you take it for granted being able to see, action and thrills and stuff. But I thought the landscapes, John, like you said, it's good to see something set in like South America. It's not a location that's typically utilized. Mm-hmm. And I thought it just looked fantastic. And so that's the heist scene is certainly the height of it.
There's even like a shootout very early on that's pretty well choreographed, and I think it speaks to what you're saying, Will. It's efficient because there's just a small, seemingly dispensable moment with Oscar Isaac, who shoots a building, and then he turns around to a character and was like, "Nice shot," and that is really setting up character motivation. It's setting up like his reasoning for why he doesn't trust these people and why he needs to basically sneak people in to help him finish the job. And I thought that was like a really well done piece of writing. Maybe that has some stamp of Shandor in it, but and I will say with the heist too, the fact that they made it rain to sort of give you this sort of tip off of like, okay, that wasn't expected, but they still rise above it, and then it leads to some really gorgeous like thematic depth because it's like literally weighing on them
Yeah.
It's like good foreshadowing, but then also the scenes where they're just going around and the rain from outside. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's staged really beautifully, and it's crazy that they were able to pull it off the way that they were, considering their budget. But what about you, Will Ashton? What stuck out to you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. The heist is like the centerpiece of the film in more ways than one. I think that's the point where I was really engaged with the film, and I felt like, yeah, everything you and Sam are saying is accurate. Just the way that it's done, like with clear style, but like you can see everything that's going on, and it works really well, that scene. And I was definitely engaged from that point forward, and I was a little bummed that the ending didn't ultimately work to my favorite, but. Yeah, I mean, when the movie's good, you can definitely tell like Chandor is a director who knows what he's doing and can communicate a story well. And I do think it's interesting how he was able to take his talents and take them to something that, could have been like another 12 or 13 Strong, whatever that film is called, where it's just kind of forgettable and bland.
It's
in this
12
film.
Strong. I think you're confusing it with 13 Hours.
Maybe, yeah. I get all these movies mixed up. But yeah, no, well, because they're all numbers in the title. So, including Triple Frontier. So,
right.
yeah. So, no, I mean, I think it's well-made dad movie material in that scene.
Ooh, that's a good way to put it. There are so many people I know who would watch this just because it is their jam, and it's not the kind of movie they always get. And also, it's a film, though, that has something meaningful to say, too. It's not just, here's how awesome soldiers are. It actually is being like, man, here's how difficult it is to live a civilian life. Here's what we're doing to people. And also, here's what greed does to people. It's very on the nose, but in a way that I think is good. Like, it's done with good intentions. In this case, I would say. It's not getting well received by everyone. I think I've seen some complaints that it just doesn't have a very interesting second and third act. I think some people don't like where it goes after the heist. And for me, that all basically worked, though. I guess there were just some characters here, with the exception of Affleck and Isaac. I kind of mentioned this before. I think that the Charlie Hunnam and Garrett Hedlund characters are just really blank to me. There was nothing about them that really stuck out. They just kind of felt, like a couple of character traits, and that's what really defined them. And so I was never able to latch on to them. You guys agree?
Yeah. No, I feel bad because like they think they both are starting to prove themselves more with their new projects, but they just don't really have that charisma yet. Like, I don't know. Just like I feel like this movie, it was definitely more apparent that like they just don't have the charisma that Oscar Isaac and Ben Affleck have. Because like whenever they're on screen, it just kind of feels like you said, a bit of a blank slate, which is unfortunate. And then Pedro Pascal, I think he's good in the film, but he kind of gets overlooked in the scheme of things. Like he starts,
he's very reactionary.
He starts off in the beginning kind of charismatic and fun and stuff, and then as it goes along, he's like, now I'm the pilot, and now I'm the one just saying this line. And it's unfortunate because we know that he's a good actor. So yeah, that to me was disappointing in that regard.
Yeah, most of the pathos is only suggested by a couple of these side characters, but then it's really carried through Isaac and Affleck, which, I didn't love. But I did like, there was a moment where Isaac and Pascal just speak Spanish to each other, which is kind of cool. It's like, oh, man. Yeah, two Latin American dudes in a movie, like, as friends. This is great.
Yeah, they
speak, to see that.
They speak Spanish for a good chunk of the movie. I'd say like almost like a third of it, right?
I think that was English, but you had your translator built up to how.
Oh, really?
Not
really?
Sure. But what about you, Sam? Yeah, what was it about these performances that you took away from?
What I really got out of it, and some of them they lack like really defining character traits. It sort of helps that we're a little bit more familiar with Ben Affleck and Oscar Isaac going in just from other movies. So we sort of get a sense of their presence. Garrett Hedlund is the only one I'm not terribly familiar with. And
you skipped Han, where he played Captain Hook.
Yes, John, I skipped Han.
I would say he wasn't the worst part about that film, though.
No, he wasn't.
Oh man, was it Jackman?
It'd probably be Tiger Lily or Hugh Jackman. I don't know.
I don't know, but I mean, he's like he was good and On the Road. Like he's been good in a couple films. I just don't think he's
really
ever
good in On the Road.
Yeah. I think he was even good in Country Strong, which isn't a good film, but he was like good in it. It's just kind of a shame.
He was the guy in that,
wasn't he?
Wasn't it Jessica Roth and like some guy I don't recognize because.
Wait, I'm thinking of the Gwyneth Paltrow movie. I think you're thinking of Forever My Girl.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking of Forever My Girl. I apologize. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was the one of the country musicians in Country Strong, but that movie's like 10 years old now, so how can I remember at this point? But
I'm surprised but impressed.
yeah, but I think he's mostly known for the Tron sequel, which wasn't his best work by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah,
so.
I did like him. You saw Four Brothers, right?
That was the one with Mark Wahlberg, right?
Yeah, who was almost going to be in this movie. Now I think.
Yeah.
He was pretty good in that, and so I was like, oh, maybe there'll be a little mini reunion. But Hollywood is trying to make him and Charlie Hunnam a thing, and I think since Hunnam did that Guy Ritchie King Arthur movie, he's kind of been because he was a big deal on Sons of Anarchy. Like people know this guy. Yeah, he's got something. I think Pacific Rim kind of raises profile a bit, but
he's not good in Pacific Rim, though. That's my opinion, at least.
That's your opinion, and you're welcome to have a weird opinion. But
you thought he was good in Pacific Rim?
Yeah, I did, and I'll never.
All right,
I'll never let that go. But I want to say that as far as Hunnam goes, I like that in this movie. He does kind of have the humility to sort of take a back seat to some actors with a bigger profile. I just wish the writing had did him a few more favors.
Yeah. And he still has trouble with the American accent. Like, I mean,
a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, he's getting better, but like, there's some times where it feels very put upon. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, it just like, kind of like, it's very weird. Like, it's like, you can hear it trying to come out, but yeah, it's he's getting better at that. He's getting better.
Just let him have the English accent, you cowards.
Yeah.
Right.
I wish they would just let actors use their natural accent. When was the last time you heard Cate Blanchett get to use her regular accent, other than like Ocean's 8?
Lord of the Rings.
I don't know. But there's like actors like Nicole Kidman's like really good now at American accents. I just forget that she's Australian. So
I would say with Blanchett too. I mean, she nails it. Like Hela and Thor Ragnarok.
I'm not saying it's not good. Yeah, it's just.
I think she does have an English accent in Thor Ragnarok, or an Australian accent, I mean.
A little bit, yeah. It's an Asgardian accent, John.
Oh, yeah, you're right. But, I mean, Chris Hemsworth is Australian. Right. He sort of does it that way, so I don't know.
I had no idea Ben Mendelsohn was Australian. We're off on a tangent right now, so this is not
a He is. You really hear it in Captain Marvel, and then I'm guessing Blanchett has an English accent when she's Queen Elizabeth, but we could go on.
Yes.
Let's wind down our thoughts here. It sounds like we like the film quite all right, but Will Ashton, take us into your final thoughts and your final grade for Triple Frontier.
Yeah, I'm between a B and a B- on this one. I think, like I said earlier, it's well made material for what it is. I just find it a bit standard. I was a little disappointed that the film in the third act just kind of goes into formula more than not, even though I do respect the creative decision that it makes just before it. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's solid. It's well made. I think it's a good Netflix film in that, like, I don't think you need to rush out to see it, but if you happen to stumble upon it on Netflix, you'll probably get a good time. And so I'll give it a high B-, just because I don't think it's quite B material, but it etches towards it pretty closely.
I'm a solid B on this one. I think that it is. I really, really want to highlight some of just the good set pieces in this. I think they're pretty well staged, and the fact that it does have a good thematic purpose to it really elevates it for me. And I can overlook a lot of the problems for that reason. So yeah, solid B. It's not a high B. It's not a low B. It's just kind of right in the middle for me. And then Mr. Sam Noland.
Mr. Sam Noland. Well,
I just want people to start knowing you are a man about town.
Thank you. Yes, I don't which town it is. I don't know, but it remains to be seen.
Of course,
all of them, every town, even
any town you're in. That's a man about it. That's who you are, Sam Noland.
I love it. Yes, I'm right there with you guys. I think this has a lot to like about it. I do think there is. I find a little. I didn't talk about this too much, and I'll be quick about it. But I do find a little bit of moral, not necessarily haze or what's the word? Ambiguity?
Moral ambiguity?
Yeah, ambiguity. That's right. And there, like, there's sort of this tragic undertone that I feel like maybe a different director could have done a little more with. Like, I would have loved to see Sheridan's version of this. Yeah, so I think overall it does work, and I was very surprised by it. So I'm going to give it a solid B.
Okay, yeah, so about a B average for us. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 72% of critics liked it based on 78 reviews. Its average rating is about 6.28 out of 10, which lines up with its Metacritic score, which is 61, which indicates, of course, generally favorable reviews. I think that's pretty fair, personally. But that is Triple Frontier. It's on Netflix, and one of the things that I'll bring up, I was listening to the latest episode of The Hollywood Read, and one of my favorite podcasts about film out there. But in that, Kaylee Donaldson, friend of the show, and Sarah Mars were talking about how these Netflix films are really just so much. They tend to be such great experiences compared to a lot of people who live in areas where it's too expensive to go to the movies. And I was thinking about that when I was watching Triple Frontier on Wednesday, because like, this is so much easier. I'm not going to have to deal with all the busyness. I don't have to pay any extra money. I can eat dinner while watching this, but I know we really like the theatrical experience, but this is kind of where things are going. And I did have a moment during Triple Frontier. I was like, man, this is going to start being more and more the case with Cinemaholics. I think to like when we started this podcast a few years ago, this was definitely not something we would be like leading with, right? I mean, I think the first time we ever did a Netflix film was Cloverfield Paradox as our featured review, I want to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, just wanted to share that. I think that is kind of interesting. And that was a film I think, Sam, you were on for as well.
I was, yes. I'll never forget that. Oh, I forgot the movie, but I'll never forget the podcast. Completely forgot the movie. I can't believe it, man.
All right, well, let's move on to what did come out in theaters. This was, I think it was the second biggest release of the weekend. And of course, it's in Captain Marvel's shadow. All of these films kind of are. That film had a huge second week for Marvel Cinematic Universe films. But that doesn't mean we didn't get some films to try to do some counter programming. Now, Will Ashton and I both saw 5 Feet Apart, which is a new romantic drama aimed at young adults, specifically teenagers who really liked The Fault in Our Stars, the film and the novel. Because this new film from, I think Justin Baldoni was the director. Yes, Justin Baldoni. I was just making sure because I wasn't sure if I was saying his last name correctly.
Okay, yes. Yeah. He's an actor on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, right?
No, Jane the Virgin. He might have had a cameo in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
I knew it was a CW show that I still need to watch. That's really well acclaimed, but I was mixing them up, so my bad.
Right, which it would be Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, I would say. I'm not a fan of Jane the Virgin personally.
Oh, really?
I am a fan of Gina Rodriguez, but yeah, I've never been into that show. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend though is tremendous, one of the best shows.
Yeah,
we've said it before. Yeah, but yes. So 5 Feet Apart is directed by him, and knowing that, I was a little bit surprised. I was like, man, they got a director known for TV to basically make a TV movie. And that's kind of how I grade this. Really, if you watch 5 Feet Apart, it's such a TV movie. And that's not to knock it down.
No, it's just like a topsy-turvy thing. Like we see Triple Frontier, which is a movie, like a theatrical movie on TV. Right. And then we go 5 Feet Apart in theaters, which is like a TV movie we're seeing in theaters. Like, what's going on here? Who flipped the script here? What's going on?
Yes, I wrote a piece about the main actress in this is Haley Lu Richardson. I wrote a piece for the young folks about this movie before I saw it, because the point of the article was that, for better or worse, Haley Lu Richardson's newest movie, 5 Feet Apart, it's going to impact her indie cred, because up until now, she's been better known for her indie movies. She's not known for Split. You know, she's a side character in Edge of 17, but she's known for Columbus and Support the Girls, and some of her under indie roles throughout the years. And I just look at this movie and I'm like, this should have been a TV movie from the get-go, because this isn't, come on, Richardson. She's one of our finest actresses, and she's really above this material in my opinion. But regardless, in this movie, we follow 2 teens who have cystic fibrosis, or CF, which is a genetic disorder that affects your lungs. It makes them very susceptible to really bad diseases like bronchitis, and they can't come within 6 feet of other CFers, as they call each other, because the bacteria of their disease will kill the other person. So for the vast majority of this film, we're in a hospital, which sort of speaks to the TV movie of it. It's like this, it's like one main location, which isn't a bad thing, but it doesn't have kind of that indie flair to it. It is kind of a conventional sort of premise. We meet a high school student who, played by Richardson, her name is Stella, and she broadcasts her experiences with CF on YouTube. I think in your review of this film, Will, you said that there's like this this kind of juxtaposition of like, she's a very energetic, active person, but because of her disease, physically she can't be, right? Which is that's very compelling. And she's trapped in this hospital. She's obsessed with her regimens and making sure she does them just right. She wants to get a lung transplant that'll extend her life by a few years. And eventually she meets a new CFer who comes to the hospital named Will, who's played by Riverdale's Cole Sprouse. Will and I had a little bit of a spat yesterday about how I had sort of implied, I didn't say that he was a newcomer to cinema, but I did sort of imply that this was kind of a role for him that's kind of transitioning him possibly from the small screen to the big. And Will Ashton was like, it's as if you don't care about Big Daddy. It's as if you think Big Daddy didn't happen. So I apologize.
Big Daddy racer will not stand.
Exactly. But yeah,
You know what
go ahead.
I wonder, what does Cole have that Dylan doesn't?
Charisma,
Like, why Cole for this one?
An acting range.
There you go.
I've always been all about the Cole Sprouse. Even during Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, I never liked the Zach of it all personally, but that's just my my predispositions.
I can't really tell them apart until now. So, I mean, I wasn't really familiar with I didn't really watch Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, so I wasn't too familiar with that.
You've said a lot of offensive things to me over the years.
Sure.
Yeah, we've had our arguments. But
well, I mean,
this is the day that it's just the straw breaks the camel's back. You can't tell Cole Sprouse apart from Dylan Sprouse. It's like you don't even care.
I'm sorry. I mean, I can tell the Olsen sisters apart, but I have trouble dissecting the Sprouses apparently. So sorry to Cole and Dylan Sprouse, active regular listeners of Cinemaholics.
Mary Kate and Ashley don't listen anymore, so I don't think they're going to be.
They shut up before my
by this.
So, yeah.
I can't tell them apart. So I'm actually a little curious about that. So I don't know how that. Anyway, like I said, Cole Sprouse plays a CFer named Will. He's very different from Stella. He's not as optimistic about CF. He kind of expects to die any moment. And we actually have a clip where the two of them are on the roof of the hospital. Will's sitting on the roof and Stella sees him and thinks he might be about to end his life. Here is the clip.
Hey, my lungs are dosed, okay? Can you just let me enjoy this view while I can?
Do you know how lucky you are to be here? To be a part of this drug trial?
How do you know about my drug trial? You been asking about me?
If you don't care, then leave. Give your spot to someone else, someone that wants it, that wants to live.
Okay.
What are you doing? Will? Will, no, please get down. Will, stop, please. God.
Relax.
Fine. Stay up here then.
All right, that is a clip from 5 Feet Apart, now in theaters. In the words of Dwight Schrute, I don't see it. I think they both could do better. But Will Ashton, you wrote a review of 5 Feet Apart on cinemaholics.com. I won't give your thoughts away, of course, but I was the one who edited it, and I edited it before I saw the film myself. So out of the two of us, you're the peer reviewer, right? You are unaffected by other opinions. So I just want to know your take on it. I think it holds probably a little bit more weight than me, because I went into this with very low expectations. But
really? I thought you were actually kind of looking forward to this one more than me.
In a demented way, in a sort of like rebellious, like I'm going to show you kind of, yeah.
Okay.
I was looking forward to 5 Feet Apart dementedly. That's a good DVD quote.
Put that on the bumper sticker.
Put that in the box. I like it in a demented sort of way, says John Crony of Cinemaholics. Anyway, no, I was, I mean, with the exception of The Fault in Our Stars, I'm not crazy about these kind of teen weepy dramas, melodramas. They're not really my thing. I've kind of outgrown them, and I don't think I ever was really into them at that age to begin with. So they're not for me. They're not made with me in mind. So I'm not the target audience here. But I will say I found this movie, like you said earlier, just be kind of mediocre in a way that felt pretty disrespectful to a talent as great as Haley Lu Richardson, who, as we've mentioned already, you know, she's a fantastic up and coming actress. I think she deserves everything that's going to be coming, hopefully soon. But yeah, I guess this movie will be good in the sense that it will give her more exposure. And I am glad that this is a theatrical release, mainly since I think it's good to give a platform for cystic fibrosis. Like, I don't think we often see this in films. Yeah. And I do think if this was on, you know, say Netflix, or if it was a TV film, there is a higher chance that this story would kind of just get lost in the shuffle and that perspective would be lost. So at the very least, I'm glad that that is being seen. I can't speak for its authenticity because I just don't know, but I would hope it's accurate, and I hope it gives a better understanding of that disease. However, as a film, it's pretty wishy-washy. It's just fine. But as Haley Richardson was giving this movie a little more life and vibrancy, I was kind of getting into it. You know, I was kind of digging it. You know, I was eager for these young lovers. You know, it's a little bit different, so I was hoping for the best. But then as the ending comes along, it's so apparent that this movie is ripping off The Fault in Our Stars handbook to the point where that last act really just like bummed me out. It was like, oh, this is just such a ripoff. And it reminded me of the other film that kind of tried to steal its thunder, Everything from 2 or 3 years ago, I believe, with Amanda Steinberg, right? Is that her name?
Amanda Stenberg, yeah.
Stenberg, yeah, who was great in The Hate You Give, another young adult adaptation. And I guess I should stress, this isn't technically a young adult adaptation, but it's trying to appeal to that crowd because they wrote a novelization, I guess.
It came out in November by Rachel Lippincott, which is clearly what they were after.
Right. So I don't know. It just feels kind of cynical in that regard. Like, it just feels like it's trying to work its way into that market the same. Well, maybe not to the same extent, but kind of similar to that other book that we talked about on this podcast. That what was that called? Handbook to Mortals or whatever.
Yeah, Handbook for Mortals. The sort of like they wrote it and then they tried to like inflate its bestseller success to make a movie of it. Yeah,
right. Which is annoying to me. It just like, you know, it just feels like you're trying to like kind of saturate your way into this genre and stuff. And I don't know. But anyway, as a film, I thought it was okay. What about you, John?
I loved it. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing. I accepted it on its terms. I think that it's not a good movie. It's not. Yeah. It is a great performance. I think that Haley Lu Richardson, she is just able to take a role that is so complicated and weird. Like this character shouldn't work the way that she's written. She should be so unlikable. There's even a part where...
Oh, really? You think so?
Well, yeah, because there's a part where Will kind of like draws her as like a fire breathing, you know, control freak, obsessive. I don't like the way a lot of characters are handled when they have like mild forms of OCD. She clearly has that, but she manages to make it endearing and sympathetic. And with all the other there are likable things about her. I mean, she loves babies. You know, there are things about her that would feel a little bit more manipulative if handled by probably a lesser actress. And so I think she nails it. I think she nails what this character needs to be. I just agree with you that, the ending is sort of, I would have done something different with the ending, to be totally honest. Where this goes, there is a moment that's kind of effective, but then it just all sort of hits the fan all at once, and it doesn't have the same spacing and timing that some of the earlier parts do. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a side character, like the stereotypical gay best friend character, I guess. Unfortunately, like we still have this stereotype in 2019.
Well, he's not, but that's the thing, is he's not like stereotypical in ways that I think Rebel Wilson would say sets back gay rights 100 years. He's
sure it's not that
I think
bad,
he's a character whose sexuality is there, and it just is. I don't think it's ever used to sort of try to make his character interesting. He's also a skateboarder. He's also very supportive and loving, and not every conversation they have is about love. A lot of their conversations are about the disease. So I actually didn't mind the way that they handled his writing.
That's
that was
fair. That's fair. That's fair. I spoke a little out of turn, but I will say there is a turn with his character that I could see coming from 100 miles away. Pun intended with the miles, I guess. But yes. It's just like, it's so obvious. Like, I was like, as soon as that character is introduced, I'm like, I bet they're going to do this because that's like, I guess the character's place in the story, which felt so cheap and manipulative for this side character, especially because like that character is one of two people of color that plays into the film, and that was a little annoying in that regard. But
I do agree with that.
Yeah.
I will say there are some side characters in here who aren't the most interesting. I mean, Nurse Barb should be everything. She's played by Kimberly Hebert Gregory. She's kind of, I don't know. They just don't do anything very interesting with her. And
I thought
the parents
performance was good.
The performance was good, but I think like her role in it was just kind of this buzzkill spoil sport.
Right. Yeah.
And they forgot to add in. There's a moment where you're supposed to really feel something with her relationship with these kids, and they missed the ball on that.
They tried. There's like one scene where they tried to do that, but it just didn't work as well as it should have. So
it's kind of too little, too late. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
But I still love this film. I think it's perfect. A+. No, but because I'm watching this and this, I'm very different from you, Will, in this sense. It's like these films, they are my guilty pleasure. I love weepy teen romances. I loved them when I was a kid. I loved them when I was a teen, and I've loved them ever since. I just think that they're very breezy, easy to love, and I like being manipulated into crying. It's great. But I understand that's not the case for everyone. But yeah, it's like you said, this is a film that I don't want to see in a theater. I don't want people to see me watching this. I want to watch this on Netflix. I want to watch this while I'm ironing some clothes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to watch this on date night. I don't really want to, date night on the couch, that is, of course. I don't really want to, I don't really want people to know this clearly how into these films I am. But I think it's pretty serviceable for what it's trying to do. I don't think it's as, I do like that it does have the two kids are sick kind of angle that Fault in Our Stars has, but it didn't quite fall into this sort of like you've got to break the rules all the time, and I don't think it always glorified some of those aspects in ways that I was worried it would. But I don't know. I think some people could disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually say, as far as its portrayal of cystic fibrosis, it didn't feel offensive in any regard. I mean, at least not to me. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but
sure.
Like that didn't feel that manipulative as much as some other elements. The more of the storytelling elements to me felt manipulative, not so much anything about how it portrays the disease.
Yeah. Even though I like this one a little bit more than you do, Will, I really liked your review on it. But remind our viewers, of course, what was your grade? And do you think people should seek this one out?
I would only say to seek it out if you haven't seen Haley Lee Richardson in anything and you need proof or another reminder that she is an amazing young actress. Other than that, I mean, I would say you could skip it. It's not that good to me. It's not really worth it. It could have been so much more, I guess, maybe, given that it focuses on a disease that's not often seen on the big screen or any screen. Mm-hmm. So I was hoping it'd be a little better in that regard, but ultimately it just kind of falls into formula and tropes more than I would have liked personally, given that I'm not a fan of this genre to begin with. So yeah, for me, it's a C+. And I would also say, what do you think about Cole Sprouse's performance? Because I thought he was just fine.
He's got it. He's got the thing that sort of makes him
angst.
Well, it's not just the angst. He has a screen presence. The fact that he didn't embarrass himself in front of Haley Lee Richardson, I'm actually really impressed by.
Yeah,
I'm being dead serious. I think that
I know.
He actually was formidable in this, and I've really been liking him in Riverdale. I think that he has a pretty good range. I don't think he's the best talent out there in terms of like actors his age, but he's definitely, I don't know, there's something about him where I could see him really, really making this transition to the big screen even better and more fully over the next few years for sure.
I'd rather see him something a little stronger, I guess, material wise, because I don't know. I mean, I didn't really see that range. Truth be told, I found his performance to be a little one note. But I do think that in some of the pivotal scenes, he does, he at least is a good springboard for Haley Richardson to act circles. So I think he was fine. Like I think he did what he needed to do for the role, but I'm not quite like seeing why he is like the new teen heartthrob just yet. But I haven't watched Riverdale.
It's the smile, Will Ashton. It's the smile. It's the fact that
smirk.
Thank you. It's the devilish grin, the demented grin, some would say, where he just sort of looks at the camera and you're like, oh, he's such a bad boy. But then he smiles and you're like, but there's something fixable there.
I heard somebody told me, I didn't notice this, but like one of the nurses is like, you got to watch out for Cole. He's a bad boy. They accidentally say the actor's name instead of the character.
Well, they aren't wrong. I mean,
I know, but it was just like such a like for that line.
That's 5 feet apart. I give it a B
man.
minus. I really enjoyed this one on a very guilty pleasure sort of way, but I also think that it's going to satisfy its audience just fine. Like, I don't think if you're somebody who does like these movies, I don't think it's going to blow you away, but I think you are going to get a good performance or two out of it. And also I bump it up a little bit because Claire Forlani is in this for some reason. Where's she been? First of all, like, I feel like I haven't seen her since Joe Black and Mallrats, but whatever. I did think it was kind of funny too, because last week we had the Mallrats reference in Captain Marvel, and then that was kind of on my mind. So Claire Forlani, reason to see this.
I was going to say the one thing, I think you kind of dismissed this earlier, but I actually did kind of like those all in one location for the most part. Like I thought the hospital
I wasn't saying it was a bad thing. I was just saying it's sort of a TV movie trope, which is
no,
that was
sure,
yeah.
No, I mean that's fair. I thought it was kind of neat, to have it all contained into one place, and you kind of get a good sense of like what the like structure and the atmosphere of like the hospital is.
There's like no security whatsoever.
Right, yeah. But I will say I found it funny after the film. Just a little tangent. One of the reps from the screening was asking what I felt of the film, and I was just giving my kind of blank response. And then another person, I don't know if he was another critic or whatever, he was just like, "Wow, that was shot in New Orleans. Could you guys believe it?" And I was like, "Yeah, because it was all indoors." He's like, "But that scene in the hospital, or that scene outside, like was snowing." It was like, that was a soundstage. He's like, "How about that, New Orleans?" He just walked away.
And Will, you made a new friend.
Oh man! So we have a new podcast.
Where was this shot? Yeah, very
New
good.
Orleans. Yeah.
Yeah, it only took them a month to shoot this film, so
Probably
definitely. Yeah, right. Very, very efficient, for sure. Sam, are you going to check out the novel, the movie, or both?
Yeah, I saw the trailer for this in theaters some time ago. I can't remember when, and I thought it looked adorable for the same reason that John, I think you ended up ultimately sort of liking it. Movies like these I have a tenuous relationship because they really affect me, and it makes me mad that they do. So I don't seek them out too often. So I'll probably see this one at like a discount theater 3 weeks from now for like $4.
You got to pace yourself with the teen dramas for sure.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a heartless robot here that doesn't like to access his emotions, apparently.
I think it's just that you have taste compared to us, but
oh, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, we've had how many episodes of this where I've talked about films with way less taste. So
everybody has their bad movie, predilections. It's totally fine. But in terms of success, I mean, this film's doing pretty well, actually. It made 13 million, like double what it was projected to make in 2,600 theaters. It got number 3 at the box office for the weekend. Huh. Wonder Park did
5.
beat it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well.
Yeah.
or 6. Oh, but they've got to steal that extra foot. Okay.
Yeah. 6 this week, 5 next week.
Right. But I was going to say though, it didn't make as much as Wonder Park, but Wonder Park was in 1,000 more theaters, so it was pretty impressive.
Nice. So it sounds like at the very least, it's like at least somewhat interesting, even if it's not all good. Then at least it's not like just there's nothing there, right?
I wasn't bored at all. That's just me. It has a 52% on Rotten Tomatoes out of 65 reviews. Average rating is 5.7 out of 10. And on, and a Metacritic, it's 52 out of 100 out of 22. So mixed to average reviews. I think I'm more on the average side of it. And it looks like you're really mixed to average, Will Ashton. So
yeah, that's about right.
But hey, its cinema score is an A, which is pretty good. It's the same as Captain Marvel. So that's all I'm going to take. But you did mention this before, but there have been some cystic fibrosis advocates who aren't into this movie, who said that the actual rule, so I'm glad we brought this up. So they say the actual rule is 6 feet apart, not 5. And the movie does kind of explain why it says 5 feet apart, because they say it's 6 feet. So if you were kind of like confused about that, because I know I was, the movie does explain why the title isn't the actual rule. But yeah. That is 5 feet apart. Let's move on to a film that Will and I did not see. So, Sam, this is your moment to shine. You saw
Oh,
kind of
boy.
a sci-fi movie that was in way more theaters than I thought it would be this weekend, as Will can attest. But yes, Captive State. What is this film? Who's in it? And what is it about?
So Captive State is written and directed by Rupert Wyatt, who you are probably most familiar with from as the director of Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Which to little controversy here. That's actually my favorite of this new Apes trilogy. I know that it's sort of the underdog, but I really dig that movie a lot. What do you guys think about Rise?
I respect it a lot, actually. I really like it.
I really, really liked it when I first saw it. I didn't like it quite as much a second time when I was rewatching the films before War of the Planet of the Apes, or War for the Planet of the Apes, I mean. But I still really dig it. Yeah, I think it's a really solid film, and I think it deserves a lot of credit for how it brought so much interest into a prequel series that a lot of people were getting ready to write off.
Even though I like Dawn and War slightly more, not to rhyme, there are more moments in Rise of the Planet of the Apes that I remember. Right, like there are more memorable scenes in that, or not memorable scenes. I don't know. There are just like moments in that film that really stick out to me. That
Why Cookie
doesn't really
Rocket?
happen with Dawn. Yes,
Why
thank you.
Cookie Rocket?
My favorite line of dialogue in this new decade.
That wasn't even spoken.
It's still dialogue.
A lot. Yeah. So yeah, I dig Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I think it's the most emotionally effective to me. The other two I think are more like impressive technically and aesthetically, but I think Rise has the pathos. And so then Rupert Wyatt after that in I think 2014. Let me make sure that's right. Directed The Gambler with Mark Wahlberg, which I did not see. Did you guys see that?
Yeah,
No.
it was.
Yeah,
it was either
not that good.
It was either okay or average. It was somewhere in between there. Like it wasn't bad. John Goodman's in that one as well.
Yeah.
It's just okay. I didn't see the original Gambler, and I heard it was just much better than that. So I'd say probably you're better off with the original than the remake. Truth be told.
All right. Well, good to know. And so then after that, here we are 5 years later, and he directed a new movie called Captive State, which he co-wrote with Erica Beanie, who hasn't done much. So I'm curious to see. The only other thing that she's ever worked on, at least that I can tell, is something called The Battle of Shaker Heights from 2003, which I've never even heard of. It has Shia LaBeouf in it, so it might be worth watching.
Oh, I remember hearing about this movie. Yeah, isn't that the Project Greenlight movie?
I don't know. Let me find out. What is
Project Greenlight?
What is Project Greenlight? I've never heard of that.
That's the Ben Affleck, Matt Damon produced HBO.
You're right. Yeah, it was like the second season, right? And it won.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it won.
Sam, you'd actually like the show, I think. It's like a reality competition, but they're like trying to make a movie.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and one of the seasons, that I believe the second one, like John said, that's the movie they make. So if I remember correctly, yeah. I've only seen the 4th season of Project Greenlight, but it's a good show. It's worth watching if you have
Nice.
the time or means to watch it.
I'll add that to my radar certainly. But this new movie, which is sort of a dystopian sci-fi movie, what happens is that there is just out of the blue, there is a strange alien invasion of Earth. Like all of a sudden, one day, aliens just show up and start taking over the world, and they end up occupying the Earth's government, and just sort of completely taking the throne as the dominant species, as the overlords. And this takes place about, I think it was 10 years or 10 or so years after that initial invasion, where everything seemingly, at least, has become sort of monotonous. You know, this is sort of just how life is now. We have these alien overlords, and the movie follows sort of both sides of the conflict from the perspective of this one neighborhood in Chicago. There's a rebel group of insurgents that call themselves Phoenix, and it's basically their quest to sort of overthrow the leaders and take back control of their lives. And if that sounds interesting, it's because it's an interesting idea. And there's a lot to do here, because basically what happens is that there's this. I never really got how old he was, but there's this young man played by Ashton Sanders, who you'll remember as the actor who played the character in the middle act of Moonlight, teenage age version.
Chiron.
Yeah, Chiron. Yeah, he's the lead character. Let me make sure I forgot the name, as Gabriel Drummond, who is the son of sort of the deceased leader of Phoenix, or the founder, who is played by let me see here, Jonathan Majors.
Right?
Yeah. And he sort of gets recruited in a way by a police officer played by John Goodman, who's seeking to sort of start an uprising with whatever means he has. And so the thing with this movie is that it sounds interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds really cool.
In fact, I have a clip, Sam Noland, where, as you mentioned, John Goodman's character is in the act where he's trying to recruit Ashton Sanders' character. So let's listen to that real quick.
I'd love to hear it.
I want a lawyer.
In another 9.5 hours, there'll be nothing left of Pilsen.
I said I want a lawyer.
You and I both know those days are gone. I didn't need a warrant when I burned your boat. You work for me now, Gabriel.
I told you. I'm not one of your nuts. I'm not gonna do shit for you.
I'm not asking you to do anything for me. I'm not even asking you to do anything for your community. Even though plenty of people are going to die. Like your father, you're more of a family guy.
I do think it's kind of weird, though. This clip ends with a Family Guy reference, but regardless, Sam Noland. Yeah, what were you going to say?
The last place I was ever expecting to find a Family Guy references in this movie. So yeah, Captive State is an ambitious story. It's got a lot of potential implications, a lot of political implications about sort of the relationship we have with our leaders and how oppression can seem like liberation in some ways, because basically the deal is that humanity has been united, and in fact there's even a line of dialogue where they say it's no longer the United States of America, it's the United State of America. So there's no more division. There's a scene in like a football stadium where everyone sings the national anthem and everyone's happy and everyone's patriotic to serve under these alien leaders. And the idea is that sort of lockstep conformity, where everyone sort of believes the same thing and behaves the same way, is itself a way of oppression. And that's a very interesting idea. The problem is that every piece of the movie is fighting with itself to make something cohesive and coherent and interesting. It's very, I mentioned these characters, but they really don't get to shine in any way. It's got a tremendous cast. I didn't mention Vera Farmiga is in it for about 3 scenes, which was very disappointing because I think she's a very good actress. And she barely gets to do anything in it. The movie is completely plot driven from beginning to end, but the problem is that it's hard to follow. It's edited so strangely that I can never tell where I am, who I'm with, and what's going on, what's already happened. So there are parts that take place like out of order a little bit. And I can never get a handle on what exactly is happening. And therefore I'm not allowed to get invested into this sort of rousing story. I didn't see the trailer beforehand. I watched it afterwards, and it's interesting because it sells the movie as sort of this like exciting let's go defeat the bad guys alien invasion movie. The aliens are barely in this. They get like one glory shot right at the front, and then it's all shadows and all implication from then on. So if you're looking for an alien invasion, this is not it, because it doesn't really show that other side. It's more of a figurative invasion, so to speak.
It really frustrates me sometimes when filmmakers are like, well, yeah, because we want you to, your imagination is better than what we could come up with. I'm like, oh, that's such a cop out.
Yeah. It's like, don't make me do work when I go to, I'm already doing work by watching this movie, because the thing is just a chore to watch. The camera is shaking all over the place to a degree I haven't seen in a long time. At least, and granted, I don't see everything that comes out, but it's been a while since I've seen something this difficult to see. The visuals are potentially neat, I'll say. There are some really nice shots of, and they barely play into the story. I have no idea what they're there for, but it's like you're gazing out over a coastline onto the ocean, and there's this huge floating rock that I guess is like a spaceship, and that looks really cool. It's like it just sort of lingers on that for a second. That's a visual, shows up a few times. I don't know what the hell it is. I've been thinking about it. I'm like, what was that there for? I guess it's some sort of ship that takes people like off planet or whatever. Barely plays into it. It doesn't sell the idea at all. And the one of the bigger problems with this movie is the whole rebellion aspect, because as I mentioned, the dystopia is more of a figurative one, where it's just sort of how conformity can be demeaning and just sort of suck all the interestingness out of life, so to speak. And we're supposed to be rooting for this uprising, for Phoenix to succeed in their quest. And they've got a lot of cool widgets and stuff that they use. They have a plan and whatever. It's vaguely coherent what it is. The problem is that they're causing more trouble than there would be otherwise. Like, it's not selling that idea terribly well, that the conformity is so terrible that it's worth rebelling against, and that it's worth fighting back against. Because one of the early things we find out is that everyone's got like a little tracking implant, which is sort of, dystopian filmmaking 101. But that could be potentially neat, how everyone's sort of forced to behave at all times, otherwise they'll get taken away. And indeed that does happen at one time. That's about all we get. I never get the sense that this world is just utterly terrible. The visuals are like gray and gloomy, so subconsciously we understand that it's supposed to be that way. It just doesn't sell the idea, and that's what frustrates me the most, because it doesn't show alien overlords. We're not, the impact they're having isn't felt, and that's just what's obnoxious to me. And not only that, but the actors are not allowed to shine. As I mentioned earlier, Vera Farmiga barely plays into it until the very end, when the movie pretends that like a bigger role than she really did, and it just doesn't work. It's completely lost me by that point.
Well, there's also Madeline Brewer, who I was kind of excited to see, right? Because I loved her in Cam.
Yeah, I saw that at the Denver Film Festival. I thought she was fantastic in that. She's also in it for a grand total of about 2 minutes, as one of sort of the side rebels who's just sort of there. Doesn't really play into the plot substantially. I'm sure there are deleted scenes where she gets to have more of an impact, but not in the movie, because really what this is about is the relationship between. It's sort of a little bit of a spoiler, but it's revealed early on that it turns out that Gabriel's father, again Jonathan Majors, is actually alive. It was thought that he had died in the original invasion, but it turns out he's not. And it's supposed to be all about their relationship and sort of how the responsibility of radicals like this sort of passes down through the generations. And that relationship never sells. When you can actually see and hear the performances, they're fine, but it just keeps cutting away, and it never stops. And so these relationships are never allowed to grow or sort of fester. It's all about the plot. The characters are just slaves to the plot. And when the plot isn't interesting, it just completely doesn't work. Both parts die. And as a result, the biggest problem with this movie is that it's just so boring. It's just a boring movie. Again, the plot just does not relent at all. And the obnoxious thing is that it's not a complete train wreck. Like, it's not an interesting failure, and I wish it was. I wish there was something utterly atrocious about this movie that could make me at least say there's something interesting about it. But there's nothing here, which is a shame, because again, like I mentioned, the pathos of Rise of the Planet of the Apes got me really excited for this movie, and there's none of that here. I don't know what happened along the way. It's like they were reading a movie, or they were reading some sort of instruction manual on how to make a good movie, and like they missed a step along the way, and everything just completely fell apart by the end.
All right. Well, it sounds like it didn't quite captivate you. Is that
No, not quite.
Maybe it put you in a state of negative reaction. I don't know, but yeah,
it put me in a state, that's for sure.
What was your final grade?
It's going to sound funny because I barely said anything positive about it. It's a C- movie, not because there are like things that drag it up from being a D, but because there's nothing dragging it down. And that's the most frustrating thing, is that there's just really nothing here. There are like, again, there's potential for something to be explored, some that I haven't seen explored a lot. I published a review for this on cinemaholics.com. And at the end, I sort of
our first C- grade on the website. So
is that the lowest grade so far?
So far, yeah.
Ooh, goodness. Well, it'll get lower eventually, but I'm proud to have broken the seal. And at the end of that, yeah, well, yeah, that's good. At the end of that review, I recommended sort of some other, just a small handful of other sci-fi movies that sort of fulfill the promise of this movie better. And the one I had mentioned was They Live, John Carpenter's movie from 1988, which is a movie that is very political, in spite of being sort of a schlocky alien invasion with Roddy Piper going, "I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum." And it's at the same time, it's very
one of the all-time greats. Oh gosh.
Yeah,
for me, I adore that movie.
Yeah, it's a very good movie, and so that alone does a lot of the ideas better. And it's not as ambitious. It's not as I didn't look up the exact budget, but it's not a cheap. Captive State wasn't a cheap movie. So I guess I hope that it makes its money back, because I want Rupert Wire to keep working. I want to see that. What's the word? I want to see that passion from Rise of the Planet of the Apes again.
Yeah.
Again, I haven't seen The Gambler, but I would love to see. I would love to see him do another thing and knock it out of the park. This is not it. And so, I think what I'm getting at here is, this weekend, just stay home. Everything in theaters seems to be pretty underwhelming. So, I mean, you were sort of alluded to it earlier, how
go see Captain Marvel again, but
go see it again. Yeah, this is so much better than Captive State. So yeah, not a fan in the least, and it doesn't look like I'm alone.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, the budget was $25 million, so it's kind of low to mid budget, but it's only made $3 million so far at the box office. So it's not an indie flick, that's for sure. So it's looking like it's not going to be much of a hit. It was actually projected to at least make $5 million, and it was in 2,200 theaters, and it did not do super well. Obviously, it only made I think $1 million on Friday. Not great. So,
well, I was 12 of that million. So there you go. Also,
there you go.
Elaine is in it from If Beale Street Could Talk. Tish from If Beale Street Could Talk is in it for 5 seconds. I was like, no, yeah,
I had no idea she was in this. I knew Machine Gun Kelly was in it too, but yeah, you didn't mention him, so I figured he was not as big of a presence. But
yeah, no one really gets to be a presence. Even John Goodman, who is like has some vaguely memorable moments, but it just isn't allowed to do anything. It's all about the plot. It's just keep the plot going. And critics are pretty mixed on this one for sure. 47% liked it on Rotten Tomatoes out of 34 reviews. Average rating is 5.4, so not terrible, but definitely some critics that I like to follow are not happy with it. Alex Dowd, writing for AV Club, said it's not unreasonable to expect something like excitement out of a story about freedom fighters plotting to take back the planet. Captive State does not clear that fairly low bar.
So
Yeah.
love Alex Dowd's work. It sounds like he's in line with what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, well,
right.
Maybe next time.
That's
Maybe
Captive
next time.
State. Well, thank you, Sam, for going into the captivity of that film for Will and myself, so we didn't have to watch it. So
steer clear of this one, folks.
All right. Next up, I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I already talked about the Mustang, which has hit limited release. It's in, I think, just New York and LA at the moment. I talked about this one when I saw it at the Sundance Film Festival. Already really shared my thoughts, and they haven't budged. I still really like this movie. In case you missed that episode of this show, The Mustang is a new kind of drama, just kind of like indie drama, about a prison inmate played by Matthias Schoenaerts who develops a strong connection with a horse that he's been tasked to train for auction. This is the feature film debut for Laure de Clermont-Tonnerre. I can't pronounce her name in the correct French, unfortunately, but she co-wrote the film. She did a Q&A for this one, and yeah, her passion is clearly in this. Things I like about The Mustang. It is a beautiful film. You know, Tonnerre had Rupert Impens, I think, or Rupert Impens, to do the cinematography. And there are some shots in here that they just have so much weight to them. They kind of stick out. Yeah, I'm thinking of like a wide angle shot where we see Schoenaerts and some of his fellow inmates riding these horses to try to get them ready to sprint. And it's done with a slow motion camera. And it's just the combination of the speed of the frame, the color saturation, and the look on Schoenaerts' face during the scene that is just a highlight of this film for sure. It is kind of like we talked about weepy dramas earlier. This is another one of them. This is one that's going to definitely have a lot to say about animals being in captivity, being kind of the same thing as the people that we put through the prison system. It's a film that shows us prison life in some unique ways, which I was interested about because I think Impens especially is really good at making spaces feel lived in. He did Dirty God as well. And when you see the main character's name is Roman Coleman, when you see Coleman's prison cell, you believe so easily that somebody's been living in this thing for years and that it's not a place where you want to be. And it's a place that feels real, right? And ways that I haven't really seen in a film since maybe Brawl and Cell Block 99 kind of did a pretty good job of that as well. But The Mustang, it's good. It's definitely a Sundance film. Like it has a lot of Sundance DNA to it. It's really for its indie audience. I think people are going to watch it and get a real kick out of it. I ended up giving it a B, but I do want to play a quick clip to kind of sell the tone and attitude of this film. So this clip, we have Coleman with a horse, of course, and he hasn't named Mr. Ed as some might refer to him, I suppose. But Jason Mitchell, who you guys might remember, he was in Straight Outta Compton. He played Eazy-E. He's also in Kong Skull Island and Detroit, which we kind of mentioned earlier, and Mudbound. But yeah, Jason Mitchell is teaching him the ropes, as it were, of training a horse. And as you can expect, Coleman is having a tough time naming his horse until he finally has an epiphany. But here is that clip.
It's real simple. When both ears pointing one way, to the front, he's happy. When they both pointing to the back, he ain't so happy. You see his ears?
Well, just tell me what to do, all right?
You gotta be patient, man. You gotta be patient if you want to get your hands on it. It's a real nice horse you got here, man. What you name him?
I haven't named him yet.
Everybody need a name, Roman. That might be the reason he's not coming when you call him.
I read something about a guy who could gallop so slow. It took him an hour to go 300 yards.
That's the whole story? That's slower than that mule over there. That's very unimpressive.
It's about controlling strength. He was using silk reins.
Silk rein?
Yeah.
Okay.
The guy's name was Marcus.
Look alive. We got happy ears.
Marcus.
All right, that is a clip from The Mustang, which is now a limited release. I recommend it. I think that it's a solid B film, and you can kind of hear in that clip, Schoenartz has this like really deep, brute mentality that he's really quiet. That's some of the most dialogue you hear from him, actually, up until this point in the movie. As it goes along, it gets better and better. And I think that the final shot, this is an example. We've talked about a few films today that haven't had the best endings. I actually do think the ending of The Mustang is extremely effective and kind of makes the whole thing worth it. So yeah, definitely happy to say that. So Mustang, if you can catch it pretty soon, I don't know if it's going to be getting an expanded limited release outside of the main cities, but if you're able to rent this one or stream this one, I do recommend it. It's pretty solid. That's all I got for that.
It looks like it's expanding to where I am on April 3rd. So
wonderful.
I don't know how that is everywhere else.
Critics like this one too. 95% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 40 reviews. Average rating, one of mine is on there, by the way. Average rating of 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, since I saw it at Sundance, I was one of the first that I got on the tomato meter. And on Metacritic, I johned it, yes. Metacritic has this as a 77 out of 100, which is generally favorable, and I think that is extremely fair. All right, time to finish this episode out with a TV show, a Netflix TV show. A lot of Netflix stuff this week, but Will Ashton, you saw a new Ricky Gervais. Is it a drama or a comedy? Let's talk about it.
I don't know really what this is supposed to be exactly, but I'll give you a brief synopsis of what the plot is, and you can kind of parse from there whether you think this is more comedy or drama. So the show is centered around Gervais's character, who is working as a reporter in a small town paper. He is pretty set in his life, but at this point when we meet him, his wife has died of a cancer battle. And that was like the light of his life, kind of like the main thing that was thrusting him forward. And now he's very suicidal. He has very dark inclinations, and he's ready to end it all. But because of his dog, the first time he tried to commit suicide, he has found that he is still going to push forward, but he's just going to basically say whatever is on his mind or just do what he wants, essentially. And if things take a turn for the worse, he figures he can just kill himself because he has no real reason to live. And so that's like the main plot of the story, which is, I guess the comedy comes more from him or Ricky Gervais being willing to just kind of insult other people, not really bad people per se, or not good people. I mean, generally it's people who just kind of rub him the wrong way or kind of talk back to him. But as a project like this, 6 episodes, it verges a little bit onto vanity because as Ricky Gervais is the writer as well as director of this project
and the creator of the show,
right? He's the one that's like writing the banter. So obviously he's the one that's going to like make himself look better, and which, to me, I have kind of a mixed history right now with Ricky Gervais because I do think at his best, which is probably the original Office, which I still think, much to John's dismissive tone, is the better of the 2 Offices. I just think, not to say the American one is bad. I like the American one a lot, but you don't like the British one?
I don't think the British one is bad, but I don't think it's aged nearly as well, personally. I don't think David Brent is as interesting a character as Michael Scott. Mainly because Michael Scott got more seasons.
Yeah, but I feel like David Brent is the more authentic and real character. Like
That's not what I want. I don't want real. Come on.
Well, I go to movies for fakeness.
For
that's the thing. Is but I will say, I mean, however you feel about the guy, he did kind of start this trend of mockumentary series. Like he's the one that kind of brought that style, whether you like it or not. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, him as well as Stephen Merchant, I should give him credit, the filmmaker behind Fighting with My Family. They did, pioneer this new form of television comedy. And I do think at their best, when they're working together, they did make some great shows together. However, now that Ricky Gervais is working primarily on his own, I feel like his strengths are typically when he is sort of the one that's getting like dismissed upon, like when he is kind of the punching bag in scenarios, like he thinks he can be a moral support, or he can be have a moral whatever. How am I trying to say this?
Are you saying superiority?
Yeah, there you go. I'm not pronouncing words right.
Because that's what I was feeling. It's like in everything he's been in, where he's a
right.
driving force. Yeah, he's like thinks he's better than everyone else.
But but the show and everyone else like around them obviously know that he's not, and that's typically where the comedy comes from. Is that he thinks he's better than he actually is, and then the show goes to great lengths to be like, "Oh no, like you're just kind of a pathetic, sad middle-aged man who doesn't have any real great stakes in life." And I think that's why I still like the David Brent movie from a couple years ago, because it continued that. But a show like Afterlife, where he's like kind of supposed to be like the cool guy, where he's like the one that's like smarter and a little better than everyone in some ways, that's where I tend not to like his stuff, because I don't think that's where Ricky Gervais excels. I don't think
Well, we do have a clip to kind of illustrate that point, where I think what you're talking about, like the banter and everything. So we can play that real quick, and maybe that can drive across what you're saying.
There you go.
What?
It's your post.
Put it to the door.
Well, you're here, so it saves me a trip.
I don't want to walk with it, do I?
Why not?
You're new, aren't you?
Yeah, I was transferred.
No, I don't care. But presumably in your old round, you used to put things through the door, didn't you?
Mate, there's no need to get all leery.
Why are you talking to me like this?
What, you going to report me?
Yeah. What's your name?
Your law.
Trust me.
Pat.
Postman Pat.
Yeah.
Put it to the door. That was easy, wasn't it?
You could have done that.
No, I couldn't.
Why not?
I'm not a postman.
Yeah, so it's not a bad show per se. I think it's pretty well made on the whole. Like, I do think Ricky Gervais's strengths as a filmmaker tends to be like focusing on the small, mundane lives of like British characters and having them kind of be in their quaint little existence, a little quirky, but also kind of set in their ways, and stuff like that works in the show. Like the actual town itself feels pretty lived in. Like you feel pretty organic in this world. And I think that's where his strengths come in as a filmmaker still. And I think that carries from his work on the original Office. But I tend to think this is ultimately a lesser work for him. There are a couple good moments. I do think the last episodes start to verge into pretty good territory, but I think you can see where this is going to go ultimately. If you have a guest, probably that's where it's going to be. And I didn't find it that compelling or interesting. And I don't think the message is one that really resonates ultimately, because I don't think it's very authentic. So ultimately, I'm going to give it a C+. I mean, I want to give Ricky Gervais the benefit of the doubt more than I should, I think, just because I do think when he's at his best, he can make some really good material. But ultimately, this show kind of continues this new strain of his where I don't know, I guess he feels like he needs to prove something to people, or he needs to like kind of like prove himself in a way that's like better than other people, I guess. I don't know, but ultimately I was fairly disappointed with this show.
Yeah, I have no interest in it. I'm done with Ricky Gervais. I've been done with him for a while. Ever since I saw his comedy special, Humanity, where he just went after certain groups of people with like that same superiority complex. I think his comedy is, I don't know. There's nothing to it for me. And so I don't really care about this show personally. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to engage with it or support him. I just don't like what he's doing with his talents, I guess, because I do recognize, I mean, he's a funny guy. He's good at comedy, and he obviously has gotten to this point for a reason. But yeah, I'm gonna skip this one personally. But that is Afterlife.
That makes sense.
Now streaming on Netflix. Yeah, I'm not putting down anybody who enjoys his work or anything like that, to be clear. And you said it was about 6 episodes?
Yeah, it's 6 half-hour episodes, so it's about 3 hours of material. So I will say, if you are a fan of his stuff, even now, like, it's not the worst thing on there. But ultimately, if you're looking for that return to form, like him kind of going back, this felt a little more close to that show Derek he did, which is just pretty average. Like it's for him, it doesn't feel like he's really playing to his strengths at this point, unfortunately.
All right, well, that's Afterlife. And, you know, since we are on the topic of Netflix, I've been meaning to talk about 2 shows or 3 shows on Netflix. I have never found a chance to do it. I'm not going to do it now because we're out of time, but
do it.
Nope. But they are
watch all of them and review them.
I'm just going to really quickly mention The Dragon Prince Season 2 and Umbrella Academy Season 1 and Dating Around Season 1, which I saw like almost a month ago. And every episode we've done, we just haven't had time to talk about a lot of Netflix stuff. I'm glad we squeezed in Afterlife. And all I'll say with Dragon Prince Season 2 is watch Dragon Prince Season 1. It's an animated show on Netflix. You'll know immediately if it's the show for you, but it should be. It's wonderful, beautiful, from the same writer, Avatar The Last Airbender. Boom, done, Dragon Prince, see it. Umbrella Academy, much more mixed on this one. This is one with Ellen Page, and it's like X-Men, but I think Image Comics or Vertigo Comics, it's like their version of it. And it's like students who have like these powers, but it's them grown up, and there's time travel and there's weird powers, and it's kind of crazy and weird. Slow start. When I started it, I was like, there's no way I'm going to finish Umbrella Academy. By the end of it, I was like, when's season 2? So I kind of like it. It's not bad. Then I also saw Doom Patrol on DC Universe. Hated it. I saw one episode. Brendan Fraser is in it. I know. Matt Bomer is in it. Great cast. I just thought it was lifeless, dull, and it's just not the kind of superhero show that's going to break the noise, unfortunately. And I love the subject matter. I love the material. But Doom Patrol, the fact that it's only on DC Universe, too, I don't think a lot of people are going to get to it. But even though I like that streaming service.
You said Brendan Fraser's in this show?
He is in this show.
Aw. It's not good?
I didn't say that.
Okay. Did you say it was terrible? Or you said you hated it?
I hate the show. I don't hate Brendan Fraser or Brendan Fraser.
No, I didn't think you said you hated Brendan Fraser. No.
He's
Who
actually
can hate
one
Brendan
of
Fraser?
He's kind of the only thing in the show that kind of works for me, honestly. But then last Dating Around, which is a Netflix show, which is like people going on first dates, and it's like a reality thing. I just want to mention it, and it's not a review or anything.
No, I know. I just forgot about it.
Yeah, most people did. It's fascinating. It's one of those like, it's different from like Bachelor and all that, but like it is the kind of thing where you're like, oh, who are they going to pick in the end? And I do want to kind of applaud the show that it at least kind of tries for diversity, because every episode, it's not just straight people, it's also people of color, and it basically covers a lot of the gamut, not the entire gamut, obviously, of people dating in New York City. Kind of a trashy, guilty pleasure kind of thing that I checked out. And last is Behind the Curve on Netflix, a Flat Earth documentary. Can't believe I haven't talked about this yet. I've mentioned it on the show very briefly.
Yeah.
But I do recommend that as a documentary that is about people who believe the Earth is flat. That's all I'm going to say. Just check it out. You learn about these people who are frightening, but in a way that you actually may kind of get some meaning out of why people believe in that sort of thing and what happens as a result. So that'll do it for this week's episode of Cinemaholics. I'm glad I could squeeze those in because I was getting tired of.
You completely like threw me for a loop when you said, "Oh, it's Ellen Page," but it's like X-Men. I'm like, but that's happening.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's not what I meant. Of course, she was in the third X-Men movie, and Days of Future Past. But she actually has a bigger part, of course, in Umbrella Academy. She's one of the main characters. But yeah, I do actually recommend giving Umbrella Academy a couple of episodes a shot. So. Last, let's move on to what are we talking about next week? Us, the new Jordan Peele film. It's going to be debuting in over 3,600 theaters, so I think we might be picking that one as our featured review for sure. And we kind of want to talk about maybe have a little revisited Get Out conversation. That was one of the first films we ever reviewed for this podcast, so we may squeeze that in as well if we get the chance. But then also Hotel Mumbai and Sunset are hitting limited release, so definitely a pretty front-loaded episode next week. If you like our show and you want it to continue, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever podcasts can have reviews and ratings and all that fun stuff. Go to cinemaholics.com. You can find us, our Facebook, our Twitter. Email us, cinemaholics.podcast@gmail.com. You know the drill. And thank you again, Sam Nolan, for being on the show. Let our listeners know, what's your Twitter handle so they can start following all of your lovely reviews and your Letterboxd.
All of my lovely reviews, yes. You can follow me at Samuel_Noland. At Sam Noland was taken. I've tried to get it back, and they're completely unresponsive. So for the time being, it's at Samuel_Noland. I've been trying to get more active on Twitter, so any help is appreciated. Sounds great. And your Letterboxd is, of course, on there as well. And there's a link to it on cinemaholics.com. So just find one of Sam's works. It's linked in his author bio. Nice. All right. That'll do it for us this week from the Internet California. I am John Agroni.
From the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Wesh.
From the Internet, Colorado, I'm Sam Nolan.
For producer Dent, I'm just kidding. See you next time.